I thought before we get there, we should.
Which, okay, all I saw was that, wasn't it just that 49?
This is the certification,
You can sit down.
the texting, the certificate, we filed a notice of
Yeah, but I mean,
intent
did we-
to offer the records.
We admit something?
This was in the last trial, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, all right. I was confused.
Yeah, that's
I
all right.
thought, ooh, I
Sorry,
missed
that's
something in
me.
this trial.
Yeah, for the record, Judge, it's State Exhibit number 56.
Okay,
It's the Metro PCS cell phone records.
okay.
So I'm going to introduce them with Detective Warzinski. If Mr. Trevina has an objection, I thought we should probably do that outside the presence of jurors.
Okay.
I do object, Your Honor. First, the cell phone records do not.
Whose phone is this? Sharon?
This is the records between LaRon Rayford's
Phone?
and the victim's phone.
Okay.
And there's some texts between LaRon Rayford and his girlfriend when they are at the apartment on 89th.
That's not those.
That's up there too.
It's supposed to be those. So to the record's clear, there's another batch. Yes. What number is that, Jan?
This is number 56.
This will be marked as 57.
Okay, so we need to identify, okay, so 56 is what?
56
Is the cell phone between,
Rayford and Shannon Griffin.
okay. So not Sharon, Shannon Griffin.
Shannon.
Okay, so it was Rayford's phone. Was it just his phone number and then it shows contact with Shannon Griffin?
It
Or-
shows the,
So whose phone numbers, that's what I'm trying to get, Miss Olney. Tell me the phone number, whose name it is in.
okay, LaRon Rayford.
Okay,
Has cell phone calls with Shannon Griffin.
okay. And the
The
phone
records-
is LaRon Rayford's. It's
Correct.
not Jennifer Sharon's
Correct.
phone.
Correct.
Okay, all right.
And it shows the time of the phone calls and
Okay,
prior.
but so are the phone records of Mr. Griffin's phone or
Yes.
LaRon Rayford's phone?
They are the phone records are of LaRon Rayford's phone calls back and forth.
I understand, but you got them by getting,
Both,
okay, let me just look at it.
yeah.
I know we're making this harder than it has to be.
Here's LaRon Rayford's on the front.
Okay,
The next page is Shannon Griffin's.
okay, thank you. All right. So it looks like Mr. Rayford's phone is 727-484-2392, and Mr. Griffin's is 727-906-6579. Okay, and you sent I think we did deal with this in the other situation, and obviously the jury is not here. So you sent the notice to the defense of your intent to have these admitted?
We did, Judge.
Okay,
Also, the certification of the custodian of records.
okay. So do you want, so this is 56, and what's the other one? And I'll let Mr. Trevina talk about them both at once. Is it
The other-
57?
Is 57, Judge, and that's the text messaging between LaRon Rayford and his girlfriend Tara Whitlock.
Oh, that's right. Okay, may I see those, please?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Trevina, I'm listening. So you've seen 56 and 57, right?
Oh, yes. They were
Okay.
provided in discovery.
Okay,
The issue first is that there is no nexus between those phone records and my client. So you've got questions of relevancy and of admissibility as to Jennifer Mee. I can certainly understand why they would be admissible in Mr. Rayford's trial if the proper foundation it was laid, but I don't see how you can admit phone records between other parties in the case against Ms. Mee.
okay. I hear what you're saying. All right, so the text messages between, what is it, Whitlock, Tara?
Yes.
And Rayford, I got to make sure I keep my trials separate in my head. Okay, I believe I know why you're thinking 56 should go in, but I shouldn't be the one that remembers it and says it. So you tell me what you think the connection, if any, to Miss Mee is on 56. I'm sort of, if I'm remembering correctly, you may win on that. But on 57, I'm a little bit wondering how texts between Rayford and Whitlock are, I mean, I know you like them in, but should they otherwise be admissible in a case against Miss Mee? So just so you're knowing what I'm thinking right now, I'm leaning towards sustaining Mr. Trevina's objection as to 57. I'll keep an open mind as to what you could establish as to 56.
Well,
So
I-
you can talk to me about that.
Sure, I believe in 56 was the phone records between LaRon Rayford and Shannon Griffin's phone, and I believe, in fact, I know Miss Mee gave a statement that she used LaRon Rayford's phone to contact Shannon Griffin and get him to come to the park.
And that was what I remembered from the other trial. Now, if that doesn't come, and I didn't hear that statement, I remember a reference to it. So if it came in that Miss Mee told somebody so that it was admissible in here that she used LaRon Rayford's phone to contact the victim on the day of this incident, then that would be relevant, it would tie her in, and the probative value would outweigh the prejudicial effect. Do you have anything else you want to say as to 57, which is the text messages between Rayford and his girlfriend, his former girlfriend, Tara Whitlock? Yes or no, state?
No.
Okay, so, Mr. Trevina, your objection is sustained. Mr. Trevina, you listening?
Yes, sir. Objection?
Objection sustained to 57, so that's not admitted, does not go back to the jury. So just put that back in the cart or something. So don't even put it near the other exhibits, because I'm always, and that's another thing too, I want the lawyers to stand up here and go through things before they go back, okay?
Yes.
All right,
Also, Judge, before I introduce that and have Detective Warzinski testify
56.
to 56, I will have put in her statements so that Your Honor can hear that she actually says
Okay.
that she
All right.
uses LaRon Rayford's phone.
So assuming that those statements are otherwise admissible, And you know, I've not only had the previous trial, I've had multiple hearings in this case, and so sometimes it all blends together. But assuming that in this trial, there are those separate admissions on her part that she used Rayford's phone to contact Shannon Griffin, then these phone records would come in. Okay? Thank you, everybody. So I'll just give these back to you. So that's 56, but they're not admitted yet.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you very much.
Additionally, we intend to introduce her post-Miranda statements. I don't know if Mr. Trevino wants to question the detective about her Miranda out of the presence of the jury, or we can just
Which
Move.
statements, I'm sorry?
the statements to Detective Warzinski.
The recording?
Post-Miranda, yeah. And I didn't know whether you wanted to.
You know, in the old days, sometimes we'd send the jury out and go through Miranda. Lots of times these days, we don't do it that way,
Correct.
but Miss Olney is like me, old-fashioned, and just offering that to you, and so you can pick whichever you want. Is that what you meant, Miss Olney?
Yes, it is.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate that. I don't think there's any need to do that outside the jury. If any objection I have, it would be, it wouldn't be based on Miranda.
Okay, very good. So is Warzinski next or no?
No, Sergeant Skinner is.
Okay?
He won't be long, though.
Okay, thank you. Are we ready for the jurors then?
Yes.
Thank you. We're ready for the jurors. Thank you. How's everybody doing temperature-wise, Deputy
I'm
Birch?
a little warm.
Are you now? Okay, so a little cooler again. Yeah.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Sure. Yeah?
Judge, we have some big witness here, and talking about Ms. Sharon. I just want to include Mr. Trevina, because it's clearly his witness issue.
Right.
As well, so I just want to make sure, I don't want to speak solely to him, I don't want to advise him.
Okay, who's him?
This is Rob Demaro, he's with our office, well, with the victim witness, part of our office, and he has information about it, so I just want to.
Okay, he should tell us all.
The witness is wheelchair bound, and
Oh, I know.
wheelchair transport requires an assistance code to transport this witness, which requires 24 hours notice. So I'm not sure if they're going to allow us to have someone here by 9 a.m. tomorrow morning.
Okay, well, here's the thing. If we can't get her here, then I guess somebody needs to do an order to show cause, and then we need to send everybody out like do you remember this case from before where it was, unfortunately, we couldn't get her in otherwise, so we had to send the police out to pick her up, and then they had the paramedics, I believe, bring her down the stairs, and so I sure hope that we don't have to do all that again and inconvenience the jurors. So it's very good you're here. I know it's not your fault. We're not shooting the messenger here. But it appears to be an issue, and I cannot jump the gun. I can't decide she won't be here, but we would sure like to get this finished this week for these jurors if we could.
Well, Judge, I know that victim witness has phone numbers for these transportation people. If
Uh-huh.
Mr. Trevina would like to have those numbers so he can contact them for transport, if he should get in touch with Jennifer Sharon, I'm sure that Mr. Demaro would have.
So the problem is she's been served.
Correct.
And
I
the
know.
problem is we're in trial.
I know.
So, I mean,
if he wants the numbers, fine, otherwise that. we
right,
just have
I
to-
understand. So what the state is saying is they are not intending to call her and that you plan to rest after your next couple witnesses.
We are not going to call her in our case in chief.
Very good. All right. So then if Mr. Trevina wants her as a witness, then I guess he better get those phone numbers now so that can get, and you know, anything victim, and I know it is not the state attorney's job to get her here. I am not trying to make something else the state attorney's job. They're not there, right, Deputy Birch? Okay. But I am, you know, these jurors have been inconvenienced all week. I would like them to be inconvenienced as little more as possible. And maybe I'm living in a dream world, but I was hoping we could get this finished by tomorrow night, which we can't if we don't have her here tomorrow, unless Mr. Trevina decides not to call her. Now, I hope if we jump through all these hoops that it's not going to be for nothing.
I would not do that, Judge.
So anyway, you can give him the numbers right now. You can put them on the record. That's fine if you've got them.
He
Okay.
doesn't have them, Judge, he'll email them to us.
Okay.
My
and-
concern, Judge, is, and I didn't know the state wasn't going to call her. There was never any announcement of that in this trial until today. That's the first I learned. I thought they were going to use her. That may just be a communication issue. So I was assuming they would have brought her here first, and then I would pick up with the defense after. Since they're not going to call her, the burden now solely shifts to us. We did serve her in open court.
I know.
You went over
I understand.
with Mr. Liebling, all the transportation
right.
numbers and all that.
I understand.
And I like what
But you
you're-
know, I can't do an order to have her picked up unless and until she doesn't appear when she's supposed to appear, and you've done everything you're supposed to do to try to get her here.
Well,
And then
technically,
I know you served her with the subpoena, but I also know, just like I said to Mr. Liebling over and over and over and over, there is a, it is clear, whoever wants to get her here, that this has never been simple. I've never put a witness in jail before in my life, let alone a witness who sits in a wheelchair. So that was not something I wanted to do, but that was the way to get her here last time. So if she doesn't show up on time tomorrow, then I have to determine, are you filing something? If you aren't filing something, then I guess I just keep going. I don't know, but if you are filing something and she doesn't show up, but I would like you to spend your energy on finding her, then I guess I do a pickup order, which the clerk would have to get prepared for me, and then we'd have to get that to the sheriff's office, and then they'd have to get that to St. Pete, and then St. Pete would have to get the firefighters involved so that we could have her taken down the stairs again, and there goes most of our Friday. So then we're back on Tuesday.
what I was going to say, Judge,
Uh-huh.
My subpoena asked her to be present at 8:30 a.m. start of the trial.
But, okay, you can say that if you wanted to say that. I was very clear with her that we were not trying to make her sit around the building if she cooperated.
Of course.
And Mr. Liebling probably was on the phone with her 20 times before she was here. So I am not, and I remember having a job like yours, some witnesses, you just got to babysit. So I'm not going to ignore the law, but she's just, not going to say, come sit the first day of trial, nor do we want her to. So,
Of course. But my dilemma is if her phone keeps going to voicemail and saying the message box is full.
I bet you have an investigator, or you could send one of the lawyers that's not really actively participating in the courtroom out to her location. You could follow up. Mr. James is sitting there. He's, not doing witnesses. That's fine. I'm sure it's a lovely experience for him, and I'm not making him do it. But there's a third body. He can make phone calls. He can go out there. There's no reason you can't do everything. I mean, I'm not tying you all to your chairs. I'm saying he can leave to do that. And all I can do is call the balls and strikes before, as they come before me. I just expect everybody to do their part. And as I said to Mr. Liebling over and over and over, you have to work harder to get her here. So, there you are. So, how are we going to get the phone numbers so Mr. James, can you do that? Or Mr. Waluda?
I'll do it.
All right. Okay, so just make sure that you all get that communication done, and
The presumption would be that he would go out later today or this evening to tell her or post on the door
well,
that
but
she's-
also with these, it's not just posted on the door. You have to organize how she gets down the stairs and how she gets to the courthouse, just like Liebling did. Somebody has to bring her down the stairs. I don't remember who did it on the trial. On the one hearing, after I issued the pickup order, I remember seeing a photo in the paper. There was the firefighter paramedics getting her down the stairs. She has people that live with her who occasionally take her down the stairs. I remember telling Mr. Liebling, you get more with honey than vinegar. Don't call, he called yelling at the family. If you're yelling at the family, it's not going to help. But there is no question she's put us on notice that she needed assistance for that. So if you're retained in Miss Me's case, that's part of your responsibility. And, you know, with Mr. Liebling, that was part of his responsibility. He kept telling me he was going to have to fund it up front and get paid back later, even though he had an indigent, you know, client, because JAC doesn't have somebody to do that. So I know this has never been simple. I'm not suggesting it is. I'm just saying, plus, don't you want to get it done? If they've rested and then we have to break for a day, who's that going to reflect well on? So that's why I'm telling you, and victim witness is here to say they need 24 hours notice. Now, I sure hope if, you know, anything that can be, and I'm not saying it's a state attorney's job, I'm not saying it's a state attorney's enforcement, or somebody related to law enforcement asks for something, they get it done. So I am just saying I would like everybody to do the best they can. These poor jurors deserve better. So, you know, in the battle of trial, it doesn't mean we shouldn't all work professionally to make sure that's done. But Mr. Trevina, it's up to the state whether they call her or not, and it's up to you if they don't call her to get her here. So there we are. So what? I feel like a babysitter. How do we get the phone numbers to Mr. James so that Mr. James can get on that now? And you need to understand, it is not a matter of telling her she just has to be here. It is to make sure you either have a commitment from her family, okay, we're getting her down the stairs and there, or you've set it up, which was supposed to be 24 hours notice, which it's past that now. So that's why I'm saying work with victim witness for Mr. Trevina here. Okay?
If I could just speak with Rob outside.
Absolutely.
Ready.
We're ready to call witness, Judge.
Okay?
Other than this issue.
Uh-huh. Very good. Let's bring the jurors back.
Judge, the jurors are present and seated in the jury box.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your patience. You may call your next witness. State.
Your Honor.
Would you get her some water?
Thank you, Judge.
Go ahead, Mr. Labruzzo.
Yes, Judge. State of Florida would call Terrell Skinner.
Step right here, face the clerk of the court, raise your right hand and repeat the oath. You do swear or affirm that testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Yes. Thank you. Proceed and speak in a loud and clear voice before.
Whenever you're ready, Mr.
Thank you, Judge. Good afternoon, sir. Could you please turn to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, introduce yourself by stating your name?
My name is Terrell A. Skinner.
And Mr. Skinner, where do you work?
St. Petersburg, homicide sergeant.
And how long have you worked there?
The police department, approximately 25 years.
All right. And what are the duties as the homicide sergeant?
Basically supervise about 9 persons, one arson investigator, one actually she's just an investigator, and about 8 detectives. And we basically investigate homicides, aggravated batteries, aggravated assaults, arsons, people crimes. Anytime someone commits bodily harm on another individual or threatens that, that's what we investigate.
And in your supervisory role, is it fair to say you kind of orchestrate and assign certain roles to different detectives?
Yes,
Okay. Detective Gibson, who formerly worked with you,
yes.
he kind of described a little bit for this jury, but if you could describe when a homicide occurs within your jurisdiction, are you notified?
Yes, I am.
And do you respond to the scene?
Yes, I do.
And is it also your responsibility to delegate who in fact will be the lead detective in the case?
Yes.
And how is it that you determine who is going to be the lead detective?
It's done mostly by availability. If the detectives are available, we'll start there first.
I'm sorry. Well, I mean, there are other factors at play by maybe the number of cases that they're currently investigating.
Yes, availability, and if you've had the last one or the last couple, you're probably not going to get the lead. You might be assigned to assist, or you might be assigned to a crime scene. It's normally 3 detectives that normally comes in on an investigation unless there are multiple witnesses or multiple things that we have to do. So we might call in more as opposed to less. It just depends.
Okay. Did you have an opportunity to respond to a homicide scene in St. Petersburg on 7th Street and near the intersection of 7th and 5th?
Yes.
Did you have an opportunity to actually go in and look at the crime scene itself?
Yes, I did.
All right. And did you, in fact, after arriving there and sort of, I guess, looking over the scene, assign someone as the lead detective?
Yes.
Who was assigned as the lead detective?
Detective Dave Warzinski.
Okay. And were there other detectives assigned as assist detectives?
Yes, that night, Detective Gibson was an assist. Detective DeLuca came on a little later, and Detective, I believe it was Tower, that did the scene.
Okay. And did you have an opportunity to stay at the scene and kind of get informed as to what preliminarily happened? Or at least of what you could read the scene to be?
It was basically reading the scene. At the onset, there were no witnesses. Basically, it's just the scene. We basically read the scene and let the scene talk to us.
All right. Did anything in particular about looking at the deceased individual, in this case, Mr. Griffin, that looked ordinary to you?
His dress, he was dressed really nice. He had on, well, there were expensive tennis shoes at the scene, and we were assuming that they were his. He had on a pretty expensive shirt, dressed really nice to be in that situation.
As a homicide sergeant, I imagine you responded to pretty much all the homicides that occurred during your tenure as a sergeant, correct?
Yeah, when I'm available, yes.
Right. Approximately how many is that?
Since I've been a supervisor, probably well over 100.
Okay. Anything about, did you have an opportunity to observe his pants as far as the location on him?
Yeah, they were on, but they were pulled down below his buttocks.
To you, as the sergeant, and you're trying to read the scene, did that indicate anything to you? Was you abnormal about that, or anything out of your ordinary?
With his shoes being off, his pants being pulled down a little bit, a lot of kids wear them like that, but in this particular case, it seemed a little out of the ordinary.
What about him?
They were unbuckled, unsnapped, and the zipper was down a little bit. That was kind of unusual.
Have you had an opportunity to investigate, let's say, in addition to homicides, robbery cases where someone may be robbed on the street,
Yes,
as opposed to a bank robbery or a robbery in some sort of retail shop?
yes.
Anything about the any common thread in investigating those cases, as you may have seen with Mr. Griffin as he laid it?
Yes, looked at like there might have been a little bit of a struggle, and that's taken into account everything that was going on in that scene. We had 2 different pair of shoes. We had a gun there as well as some other items. So it looked like there might have been a struggle, and then the house was vacant. So you have to take into account everything that's going on, and then you come up with an educated guess of what happened.
Let me ask you this question. If someone is being robbed, assume for a second, and the items, their property is in their pockets, okay? And assume that they don't want to give up their property. Have you been to scenes where people have either been the victim of a homicide or a robbery where they don't have their clothes on them?
We've had those before. We actually investigated murders where the victim's not wearing anything. But in this particular case, like I said, clothes were in disarray, pants down. I'm not sure without looking at the photographs whether or not his pockets were turned inside out.
Let me show you. Apologize, one moment.
No problem.
I'll just use. No, maybe it's, yes. Of your time at the scene, do you participate in what's been described as a next of kin notification?
Yes.
And who did you go see?
Uh,
Notification.
we went to a residence that was far north, and it happened or turned out to be the cousin of the victim, along with myself and Detective Gibson at that time.
And speaking with Mr. Bowles, did he provide you information about the deceased?
Yes.
Did you search his apartment at all? Did you do anything like that?
Yes, we were allowed to check his bedroom to come up with who he could have been with, and we couldn't come up with anything at the time as far as who he was actually with or had gone to see.
Is it like a delicate balance between doing a next of kin notification and maybe a search of a residence as going through someone's property?
Yes, we wouldn't normally do that, but in this particular case, we didn't know who he had been with, and we thought maybe his room would give us some clues as to who he might have went to see or something like that.
Did you have an opportunity to participate in some interviews that occurred back at the St. Petersburg Police Department the following day?
Yes.
All right. I guess the robbery homicide room has been described as kind of an open air, large office space.
Yeah, it's an open space with, I guess you would call them breakout rooms. My office is one of the breakout rooms, and there's an interview room inside of that main office as well as another office for one of our investigators.
And did you have an opportunity to participate in interviews of particular people in this case?
Yes.
Did you have an opportunity to interview an individual named Lamont Newton?
Yes.
Okay. And not asking you what was specifically said in that interview, but you did have an interview and complete an interview with him?
Along with Detective Gibson, yes.
Okay. And then after that interview, did you have an opportunity, was that in an interview room?
Yes, that was in the burglary interview room, which is down the hall from our office. And once again, it's like an offshoot of their main office.
All right. After that interview, did you come back to the robbery homicide office space?
Yes.
When you were in that space, did you have an opportunity to see or interact with Miss Mee?
Yes, she was sitting in the main portion of our office, I believe, to the robbery side.
Okay. Did you have any conversation with her at that point?
Not initially when I came back in the room, but at a certain point in time, yes.
Okay. What was that discussion about?
It was basically me telling her that she needed to tell the truth because of some information that we had found out.
Okay. Prior to that, had you had any statements from her?
No.
And did you participate in any interviewing of Miss Mee?
No.
Okay. A moment, Your Honor. Sergeant Skinner, your conversation with me, did that happen before or after Detective Gibson had spoken to her?
It was after.
Okay. No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Sir, as far as the crime scene itself, you said that you were asked, was there anything out of the ordinary? And you indicated that the expensive shoes, the fact that they were there seemed out of the ordinary. Is that what you said, do you recall?
Yes.
Now, by that, do you mean that because it appeared to be a robbery, was it surprising that the shoes were still there? Is that what you meant by that? Is that why they seemed out of the ordinary?
No, for that crime scene, they seemed out of the ordinary because of the location, number one, the time of night, number two, for him to be wearing those expensive tennis shoes behind a vacant house seemed to kind of out of the ordinary to me because it was brought up that it might be a drug deal of some type, and I'm like, you don't normally wear those type of clothes to do drug deals.
Okay.
That's why it was out of the ordinary to me.
And then in terms of if it had been a robbery, the fact that they were still there, that would have been out of the ordinary as well.
Well, coupled with the fact that there was a gun at the scene, there were shoes at the scene, then there was another set of shoes at the scene. In my mind, something went wrong, and whoever was responsible had to leave in a hurry, and they left a lot of stuff behind.
All right. In fact, goggles, whether they were expensive or not, were also left behind.
Couldn't understand the goggles.
Okay.
Just like didn't make sense for him to have on expensive clothing. Sometimes that's the style with younger kids. They'll wear glasses and funny shaped glasses. We couldn't determine initially why he had goggles. We later determined that there was a motor scooter that was registered to him, found across the street. Now the goggles made sense.
All right. And the fact that the moped wasn't stolen, again, did that seem unusual as well, that if this had been a robbery, that almost nothing of value that you could see had been taken?
No, it didn't make it seem unusual once we start piecing everything together, for the simple fact that it appeared that whoever was responsible had left in a hurry.
All right. And you did, in fact, make your way to the victim's apartment?
Yes.
All right. And you did, in fact, search, or do at least a cursory search of the apartment?
Yeah, we're basically looking for some type of journal, phone book, something that the victim might have had that might have led us back to who he was going to see, who he was going to visit.
Correct, okay. And that would be normal, that would be natural to do that, to find out what had happened preceding his death.
In this particular case, it would have been normal.
Now, was that you who did the cursory search, or was that Detective Gibson who did the search?
It was both of us. I believe we're just checking dressers and nightstands just to see if there was anything there, maybe a phone number that he may have left behind or something like that.
All right. And you recall ultimately locating a computer?
I believe there was a computer in the apartment, maybe in his room, I'm not sure.
All right. Did anyone, either that night or to your knowledge, go back and do a search of the computer?
To my knowledge, I don't recall anybody taking that computer or doing anything with that computer.
All right. And at least that night, you did not do a search of the computer to see if there was any chatting or any exchange of messages on a social network? You didn't do that, at least not that night?
No, no.
All right. And subsequent to that, in the last 3 years, no one's gone back to look to see who's been chatting with who as it relates to that investigation?
You would have to speak with Detective Warzinski. I
right.
don't recall that now.
Okay. Now, you said that when you arrived at the crime scene, the pants were down below the waist, correct?
Correct.
All right. And that, oh, by the way, I didn't hear you say this, but wasn't there also a condom wrapper there?
It was a condom wrapper. If I'm not mistaken, there might have been a condom. I know there was at least a wrapper there.
Okay. All right. And when you saw the condom wrapper, ultimately it was taken into custody as part of the chain of custody. You're aware of that, correct?
That's correct.
All right. Was that done at your direction or someone else's direction?
It will be done at the scene detective's direction. There's a
Okay.
lot of stuff that he's doing. He's pretty experienced, so normally he'll do the initial. We'll come back, do a walkthrough to make sure we collected everything.
All right. And then, not to jump around, but after you went to visit the victim's apartment, were you also put on notice that there may be a piece of paper with a name and a phone number?
We were made aware of that.
All right. And that name and phone number was somehow connected for the reason why this young man had left the apartment that night. That was your understanding?
Well, it was my understanding that there was a piece of paper shown, but the person that we actually talked to did not actually have that piece of paper
Okay.
shown by the victim to that person.
All right. And to this date, that piece of paper with whatever name was on it and phone number has never been recovered, correct?
That's correct. We were told that the victim actually had it, not the person that it was being shown
Correct. All right. But, again, when you arrived at the crime scene, in addition to everything you just said, the goggles, the moped, the shoes, the condom wrapper, no paper with a name and a phone number, to your knowledge, has ever been taken into custody?
No.
And has any efforts been made to go back or to look for that piece of paper with whatever name was on it, whatever phone number was on it, to try to locate that piece of paper?
We normally do a walkthrough. After everything's collected, we normally go back out, do a walkthrough, make sure we collected everything that we feel is of evidentiary value. And I don't think we found a paper with a number on it.
Now, in terms of interviews, you testified that Mr. Lamont Newton was interviewed, and I believe, well, let me ask you, did you participate in the interview of LaRon Rayford?
No, I talked to him, but not the actual interview that he did with Detective Warzinski and I believe Detective DeLuca.
What about a Jennifer Sharon? Did you interview her?
Yes.
Okay. And that all took place around the same time that Ms. Mee was interviewed?
Well, yes, you can say that. It was multiple detectives, and everybody was interviewing everybody at the same time. And what we normally do, we'll branch out, do our interviews, and then we'll come back, we'll meet, and discuss what was said during those interviews.
All right. Were you present when Detective Gibson interviewed Ms. Mee?
I wasn't present during that interview, no.
All right. But it was brought to your attention that Detective Gibson had in fact interviewed her?
Initially, yes.
All right. Were you aware that Detective Wazinski went back and interviewed her after Detective Gibson had done that?
Yes.
All right.
I'm the one that told him to go back and he needed to re-interview her because the statements were different.
Okay. And with that being said, did Detective Wazinski even know that she had already been interviewed by Detective Gibson? You didn't tell him that, did you?
I told him he needed to re-interview her. I don't know exactly what I told him, but I did tell him she needed to be re-interviewed because...
Well, that's fine.
Yes.
Okay. Just prior to that, though, you did go up to her and say, you need to tell the truth.
Yes.
All right. Now, do you recall, was she in custody? Was she under arrest at that time?
No?
Okay. Where was she sitting prior to you going up to her telling her, you need to tell the truth? You remember?
She was sitting on the robbery side of our office. We have the office split, robberies on one side, homicides on one side, and she was sitting on the robbery side because when we're working, you know, we're pulling up stuff on our computers and we wouldn't want anybody to see what we're pulling up.
Do you know if she was surrounded by any law enforcement officers or monitored or just being observed?
There was at least one, maybe two officers that was standing by. And we would normally have that because most of the detectives are branched out into different interview rooms and we're not going to leave anybody in our office unattended.
All right. You never did, you certainly didn't tell her you can leave at any point prior to telling her she needed to tell the truth?
No, she was there on a voluntary interview, voluntary interview anyway.
All right. And that was brought to your attention by Detective Gibson, though, correct?
That she was there voluntarily?
Correct.
No, I knew she was
All right.
brought there voluntarily.
Well, she was brought there voluntarily?
Yeah.
Okay.
We had to give her a ride.
All right. In a marked police cruiser?
I don't know how she got there, but I know one of our officers or detectives brought her to the station.
All right. You personally didn't talk to her at the scene?
I spoke to her. Hi. She was basically, when I got there, she had talked to Detective Warzinski, Detective DeLuca, and our attention was focused on the other subjects.
All right. But you were not the one who invited her back to the police station, courtesy of this marked police cruiser, correct? That wasn't you who invited her?
I'm not the one that invited her, but I would have probably been the one that says, you need to ask her to come back to the station.
Okay. All right. So was it your direction that if she was invited to go back voluntarily, it was done at your direction.
If they hadn't asked her to come back, I would have asked them to ask her to come back.
All right.
Yes.
And because it was voluntarily, she could have said no and walked away.
That's correct.
But you didn't tell her at the crime, at the scene where she was located, you didn't tell her you're free to leave. You never had that conversation with her.
There would have been no need to tell her that. She wasn't in handcuffs. And at one point, we had all walked away from her to deal with the arrest of the other subjects. So
All right. At any point, sir, did you direct any of the detectives to investigate the case from a sexual nature? In other words, if there was a sexual component to the homicide?
no,
Okay.
no.
But you did say you did find a condom wrapper, and you think maybe there was a condom as well?
I knew there was at least a wrapper.
All right. But your memory seems to suggest that maybe there was a wrapper? I mean, an actual condom somewhere?
You see a wrapper, you think actual condom.
Okay. And because of your training and experience, it had occurred to you that it may have been, the homicide may have been related to perhaps something sexual in nature.
At that point, we were throwing out everything. I mean, it could have been several different scenarios. We'll put those scenarios out there. Once again, we didn't have any eyewitnesses at the onset, so basically, we're reading the scene. It could have been this, it could have been that.
Okay.
So
All right. And with that in mind, did you personally instruct any of the detectives that you had delegated duties to do a swabbing of his genitals or anything of that nature, to investigate that aspect?
not in this case, no.
All right. But you have done that in other cases. You suspect something sexual may have been involved.
And that's based on the scene.
Okay. All right. When you came across Miss Mee, did you immediately recognize her from her history in terms of publicity and all that?
No, I didn't know who she was.
Okay. Was it ever brought to your attention within that window that we're referring to from the time she was located and the time of the interviews that she was the quote-unquote hiccup girl? Was that ever brought to your attention?
Yes, it was.
All right. All right. And you were the one who was responsible for the press release as it relates to this case?
The initial press release.
The initial one?
Yes.
All right. Press releases, is that part of the natural duties when it comes to all homicides?
Yes, either myself or, depending on the time of day, our PIO, public information officer, he would do it, or a lieutenant from the street would do it. In this particular case, I had, I guess, the facts as we knew it up until that time. So I basically put out that press release, which was basically, we're working a murder. This is the victim's name, date, time, and basically that's it, because nobody had been arrested up until that point.
All right. So to your recollection, you never included the hiccup girl in that press release?
Not my press release, no.
Okay. And if I could have a moment, Judge?
Yes.
All right, and I think my last question, Detective, is as far as the, ultimately, there was a press conference related to this investigation.
objecting.
I guess approach the bench.
Detective, my last question is, were you involved in the press conference that occurred after she had been identified as a Hiccup girl?
I don't believe I wasn't.
All right, thank you. I have nothing further.
Sergeant Skinner, you were asked a number of questions relating to the property that was found at the crime scene.
Correct.
In addition to property that may be attributed to the victim in this case, there was also a firearm left at the scene, correct?
That's correct.
In your experience as a detective and a sergeant involved in homicide, is it common to find a murder weapon at a scene like that?
Very uncommon.
Okay.
Very uncommon.
And again, I think you said that the scene appeared to you that the people that were there left in a hurry.
That's correct.
Okay. Now, you were asked a number of questions about the search for a piece of paper with potentially a name and a number on it. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Did that information came from the victim's cousin, is that correct?
That's correct.
Did it seem as that there was a definitive answer as to whether or not the paper had information such as a name and a number on it? Or did he just say that there was a piece of paper and he was holding it?
Basically, he had a piece of paper and he was holding it.
Okay. But there were some assumptions based on, I guess, all the facts that maybe there was a name and a number on it, correct?
It was an assumption.
All right. You were asked a number of questions about investigating this case as for some sort of sexual crime. Did this case indicate to you that there was some sort of forcible sexual assault occurring on the victim in this case?
No.
I mean, I guess had there been, would you have taken different steps as to investigate it?
Most definitely.
Did the location of where the body was found, did that indicate to you whether or not this was some sort of forcible rape or sexual assault type scene?
No.
And you were asked some questions about the voluntariness of Miss Mead coming down to talk to you guys. If someone says to you as a homicide sergeant and they agree to come down and speak, would you then have to tell them that they have the right to leave?
Objection, speculation.
Would you tell them that?
No. No.
And finally, you were asked a number of questions about a press release that you issued as the homicide sergeant in this case. And when you released your press release, you did not include the name Jennifer Me or the term Hiccup girl in that, did you?
No.
And why is that?
I didn't even know she existed as it related to this case when I released that information. It was basically what we knew so far, which was we were working on a murder where the victim had been shot multiple times.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Is he excused, or did you wish for him to remain on standby?
Remain on standby, Your Honor.
Okay, but can he leave the building?
Yes, Judge.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, you may call your next witness.
The state would call Detective Dave Warzinski.
Okay. Come up and see me tomorrow at 8:30. Like as soon as we start.
You do swear or affirm that testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Step right here, have a seat before you step up and speak in loud.
Let me just say something. So, we're going to get started. We're going to finish this witness today. If anybody needs a comfort break, then just let the deputy know and we'll give you one because it may take a while, okay? But I wanted to get started. Everybody follow me? All right. Go ahead, Ms. Olney. Thank you, Judge.
Detective, would you please introduce yourself to the jurors?
My name is David Warzinski
And where are you employed?
with the City of St. Petersburg Police Department.
How long have you been so employed?
Coming up on 10 years now.
And in what capacity are you employed at this time?
Currently as a homicide detective.
Drawing your attention back to October of 2010, how were you employed?
As a homicide detective with the St. Petersburg Police Department.
Did you have any prior law enforcement work prior to coming to St. Petersburg Police Department?
I was a military policeman in the United States Army.
For how long?
Between active duty and reserve, about 10 years.
Detective, I'd like to draw your attention back to October 23rd, 2010. Were you contacted in reference to a homicide that occurred in the area of 511 7th Street North?
Yes, I was.
And is that in St. Petersburg?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you go to that scene
Yes, I did.
in Pinellas County?
Yes, ma'am.
And who called you, who contacted you about that homicide?
Sergeant Terrell Skinner.
And what did he ask you to do?
He asked me to respond to the scene. He told me that I would be the lead detective on the investigation, that Detective Tower would be doing the scene investigation. He would respond as well.
And do you recall what time you arrived at the scene approximately?
A little after midnight, actually on the 24th.
Okay. And was the body of Shannon Griffin still there upon your arrival?
Yes, it was.
Had the paramedics already arrived and attempted to treat him?
Yes, they had.
Were there other officers present upon your arrival?
Yes, ma'am.
How many would you say there were there?
It was a rather large crime scene that had been set up, so there was a significant number of patrol officers ensuring the crime scene.
Let's talk about a crime scene so that jurors know what you do, what law enforcement does to protect a crime scene. Officers, upon their arrival, what's the first thing they do when they know they have a homicide?
What they'll do is take some crime scene tape. I know we all see it as large of an area as possible to try to ensure that we don't have people walking through the crime scene, as well as preserve any possible trace or any kind of evidence that may be still at the crime scene. And then they'll start creating a log of a list, everyone for the times in and times out for anyone who goes in and out of the scene.
So if you go in, they write your name and the time you went in and the time you left.
Yes, ma'am.
And everyone that goes into that scene, the same thing is done.
They're logged in and out, yes, ma'am.
And approximately how long is that crime scene preserved?
Until we decide to release it.
Do you recall in this particular investigation, how long?
We released it that day on the 24th, about 10:15 in the morning.
And did you keep it through the night so that you could go back there during daylight hours?
Yes, ma'am.
Let's talk about the lighting situation at the crime scene. Could you tell the jurors what the lighting situation was like?
It is a residential area, so you have street lighting. It's part of the older area, so you've got a significant number of trees as well. So parts were very dark in shadow, and then other areas of the street were fairly well illuminated, but the back fairly dim.
Did you all bring lighting into the area so you could conduct your investigation?
We did use both our flashlights as well as the digital cameras, and as well as some of the other instruments had lighting.
Upon arriving at the scene, what did you observe immediately around the scene and where Shannon Griffin's body lay?
When you walk back to that southeast corner, it was a recently renovated two-story house. It was not an occupied home. There was a fence, a wooden fence that ran along the perimeter of the house from the east side back along the south side, and it separated from the properties on those sides. It was about a 6 to 8 foot wooden privacy fence. I'm not sure the exact height. On the south side of that wooden fence area, there was a concrete walkway that had been paved that also extended along the east side of the house. But between the walkway and the wooden fence was a concrete, like one block high, like secondary wall that had been set up. Mr. Griffin was in between that concrete little block wall and the fence.
You may.
I am showing you what's been entered into evidence as State's Exhibit Number 2. If you could just point out what area where the concrete wall is.
This area right through here is the actual concrete wall. There's a fencing right through here, and then in between, right in this was where the wall was.
And this is a home this is 511 7th Street North.
Yes, ma'am.
Is this also a home over here?
Yes, it is.
And there's a fence in between,
You got a fence that runs along the perimeter line right through here.
and his body is back in the corner.
Back here, yes, ma'am.
And what about what is here?
Front yard.
Okay. And at the time of this,
Miss Olney, I
Yes.
need to take a real brief break and handle something. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to send you back to the jury room for just a couple minutes. This is a little unrelated, and I just need to take care of it. Thank you for coming up, Jim. So, just leave your pads and pens. Go ahead and take your comfort break now. Sorry. Okay, did you get through?
Your Honor, I have not had a chance to get through to her, but I did get through to the transportation people, and I did order transportation to her house to be there at 9 a.m.
Okay,
I will
so,
be there later on this evening, personally knock on the door, leave a message, do everything I can to relay the message.
go as many times as you need to, so she's ready. Okay, let's take about a 10-minute break.
All rise for the recess for 10 minutes according to the courtroom clock.
Yeah, but he's got a computer. I need him. Yeah. Well, I'd rather have you do it, just, if we start fumbling, Huh? All right, show me how to do it.
Deputy Birch? Sorry? Yeah. But I'm gonna read it. You do the rest? No. Well, like.
I know, but I gotta go.
go.
You can have a seat.
You turn that thing on.
What? I'll help you. Barry, can you come here a minute?
So,
Can you stand here? Here. Oh, are you talking about that or this?
That, oh no, the television that plays this computer.
Is there a way to, do you have you'd have to plug in?
Yeah, you have to plug. You can't-
Is that plugged into that? Well, you have to hit attorney
Here.
east or west, whichever one.
Attorney West.
There's we.
Wow. See if it,
Can you show me?
Sweet.
see if it actually plays. Because it's plugged in.
Yeah, it's plugged into that system. And you have a choice of whichever desk you're at, it's attorney east or west. So.
But
It's coming through there. You need to, is there a
She
way
has
to
to
make it
turn
come?
the system
All
on.
right, let me do it. It's on broadcast. It's on broadcast.
Put it on put it all the way up. Is it all the way up to the first button?
Oh, here, let me see. Are you playing it now?
Yep.
I'm turning it up.
It's coming up slowly, I think.
I hear it. Why don't you plug in what it was before? No, it's playing.
Is that as high as it goes?
Yeah, let me
She's got it on broadcast and I just turned this like a light.
let me plug it in the other one.
Hey, Stacy, I think that we'll be in court.
Well, we're not gonna.
No, dude, it's
Is it on the top button? Okay. Not just system on, it's on
She's
broadcast.
got a knob,
Get that in that.
but it's
Turn the
not.
volume.
Yeah, I don't like it.
rollers and hinges last 3 times longer than the other guy, and you never pay extra for nights and weekends. That's
hold the mouse up here, my own screen.
the name you can trust.
Ooh. He's trying, Cam. Mom, I can't see the volume thing.
Don't worry about it. Refresh it.
God damn it, an ad pulled up. The volume is all the way up.
Oh, sorry.
Even look. Even. Dad, look. That's good.
Scene, do you participate in what's been described as a next of kin notification?
Yes.
Who did you go see?
We went to a residence that was far north, and it happened or turned out to be the cousin of the victim, along with myself and Detective Gibson at that time.
And speaking with Mr. Bull, did you provide information about this?
Yes.
Did you search his apartment at all? Did you do anything like that?
Yes, we were allowed to check his bedroom to come up with who he could have been with, and we couldn't come up with anything at the time as far as who he was actually with or had gone to see.
Is there a delicate balance between next of kin notification and
This is my band.
Yes, we wouldn't normally do that, but in this particular case, we didn't know who he had been with, and we thought maybe his room would give us some clues as to who he might have went to see or something like that.
Did you have an opportunity to participate in some interviews that occurred back at the St. Petersburg Police Department the following day?
Yes.
All right. I guess the robbery homicide.
Okay, so Mr. James, are we back on the record? So Mr. James, that's great if he's going to get her, but if he doesn't get her now, he goes back later tonight. He goes back in the morning.
Here's the fence this evening, Senator.
Thank you very much. Sorry for the interruption. Ms. Olney, you may continue.
Thank you, Judge. Detective, I think that you're pointing out to the jurors where the fences were behind the house where
Yes,
the
ma'am.
victim was.
Right on the back edge, right through here.
And how tall were the fences?
It's about a 6 to 8 foot tall wooden privacy fence.
Okay. And this house was not occupied at the time this offense occurred, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
How about the house next door on the other side of the fence? Are you aware whether it was occupied or not?
No, I'm not.
Let's talk a little bit about the victim. And your observations that you made that night there at the crime scene. Could you tell the jurors how he was dressed?
Yes, ma'am. He was wearing a red and white polo shirt, short sleeve polo shirt. Underneath that was a white tank top. He had on a light colored pair of boxer briefs and a pair of jeans.
And
As well as white socks, and there was there was a pair of basically like basketball shoes.
there at the scene?
Yes, ma'am.
And he didn't have shoes on?
That's correct.
Could you tell from his socks whether it appeared that he had been wearing shoes?
Yes, the bottom of the socks were fairly clean. They did not appear to have been walking in his socks for a very long period of time.
And was there anything unusual about his pants that you observed?
His pants were unzipped. They were partially pulled down below where his crotch would be, and both front pockets were pulled all the way out.
And was that indicative to you in your experience at scenes of either homicides or robberies? Was that indicative of anything to you?
Yes, it is.
What is that?
One of the things that frequently happens with robberies is they'll have the victim either disrobe or partially disrobe or completely disrobe, remove their shoes, remove their pants. It allows them an opportunity where they can give separation between when the robbery's ended. The victim has to take the time to get dressed before they can actually pursue them.
Did you notice anything unusual in his hand?
On one hand, he had wrapped around a New Jersey Nets like book bag that was attached to his body.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit, entered into evidence as State's Exhibit 25. Could you look at that? If you need gloves, I'm happy.
That's the book bag that was wrapped around Mr. Griffin's arm.
And I am showing you, at some point in time, did you all open the book bag and look inside it?
Yes, we did.
And I am showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 24. If you could look in there.
Yes, ma'am.
And what is that?
That's a white tank top that was inside the book bag.
Did you, at some point in time thereafter, during the course of your investigation, send this tank top to be analyzed by DNA analysis at the Pinellas County Forensic Unit?
Yes, I did.
Anything else unusual that you observed about the victim?
About the victim, he had, there was an area of congealed blood in the center of his chest. There was 3 obvious penetrations through the shirt. When both shirts were actually lifted apart, you could see where there was congealed blood through both shirts, as well as what appeared to be powder burns. You could also see along Mr. Griffin's mouth where some blood had come out of his mouth.
Now, at the time you made these observations, we're referring to the victim as Shannon Griffin or Mr. Griffin. We did not know his identity at this time. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Did you gather any other items that you felt had an evidentiary value there at the scene?
There was a number of other things that we collected. In addition to the tennis shoes that were there, there was also a single right black slide, men's like a shower slide. There was also a .38 caliber Smith & Wesson revolver, which was laying on the ground. There was a Newport cigarette pack, a ball cap, a couple other items like that.
And you testified that you saw where the victim had been shot several times. Did you see any areas in the immediate scene that you thought might have been the result of a gunshot being fired?
The next day, we were able to see some strike marks on the building just to the south where rounds had passed through and hit the building behind where we were standing.
And did you have the technician take photographs of those strike marks?
We did.
How many actually did you have? Do you recall how many there were?
On the strike marks of the building, I recall 2.
Okay. Now, what do you do next that evening in an effort to determine what occurred?
One of the things that patrol will do is start a neighborhood canvass, and when we come out there, we'll ensure that the canvass actually gets effectively done. We'll re-canvass some people, and what we wanted to do is try to identify any owner of the vehicles that might have been within the perimeter that we had established. There were a couple of vehicles that were parked right on 7th Street that we wanted to try to identify them, as well as talk to anyone in the surrounding houses ourselves as well to see if they had seen or heard anything.
And in fact, one neighbor did hear something because one neighbor called the police. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And that was Jason Brazelton?
He saw something, yes, ma'am.
And did you, you or any other officers, did you learn that they talked to anyone that saw anything, or did you yourself talk to anyone that saw anything?
I did not, no, ma'am.
Did anyone else?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Do you recall doing that night, canvassing the neighborhood?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you have someone go back the next day and attempt to locate anyone that may or may not know something about this offense?
We did go back again to work some more on some other vehicles that were reported by people who called in seeing vehicles. But what primarily had happened was during the canvass, several people within an apartment building that was just to the west had identified a scooter that was just outside of our perimeter that they said did not belong there, that they had not seen before.
And when was that night that
It
you
was-
got that information?
Yes, ma'am. It was about 1:30 in the morning, 1 o'clock in the morning.
And with that information, what did you do?
There was a license plate on the back of the motor scooter. We took that license plate, and we have access to a system called David, which is a Florida state system which we utilize to run people's license plates. We ran the license plate. It provided us with an image of who the individual would be that owned that scooter. I had another officer print that image and then walk back over to where Mr. Griffin's body was lying to compare the image to the body.
And in fact, was that the image?
It was to me, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you learned then that his identity was Shannon Griffin.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm showing you what's been entered into evidence as State's Exhibit number 1, I believe, yes. Could you tell the jurors or show the jurors where the motorcycle was?
This right here is the house in question. It's 511 7th Street North. The motor scooter was right over across the street in this little parking area right here, just right off the street.
Parked?
Yes, ma'am.
Was it parked in an unusual spot or parked in a legal spot?
Just right inside the parking area.
Okay. Now, with the information you learned running the tag on the motorcycle, did you also get an address for Shannon Griffin?
Yes, we did.
And with that information, what did you have, what did you all do?
Sergeant Skinner and Detective Gibson drove to make contact with the residents of that apartment to try to verify that this was Mr. Griffin and to notify next of kin if it was appropriate.
And were they able to do that?
Yes, they were.
And did they, after speaking with them, were you able to get any information concerning Shannon Griffin's phone?
Yes, ma'am.
And what information did you get?
They provided us with a phone number for Mr. Griffin.
And were you able to do anything with that phone and the phone number?
Yes, we were.
Please tell the jurors what that was.
Sergeant Skinner made a request through our comm center What we can do with phone companies is contact them, ask them to see if we could find out who the last person that phone contacted. And if they're able to provide that, sometimes they'll give you who the subscriber of the phone that was the last phone call, the time, the duration of that call. In some circumstances, they'll give you the address of that subscriber. And in this circumstance as well, they also gave us the cell tower that it had pinged through, as well as a rough direction of where that call had come from.
And what phone number did they provide you?
As far as the one that contacted him?
Yes.
That last phone number was 484-2392.
At some point in time, were you able to identify who that phone number belonged to?
Yes, we were.
And who was that?
LaRon Rayford.
And were you also able to determine what the location of the tower that last phone call came from?
They identified as being tower number 163, which is located at 550 First Avenue South, and that the call was received roughly within 1.5 miles north of that tower.
Did you also, when you talked with them, were you able to get a billing address for LaRon Rayford?
Yes, we were.
And did you attempt to contact LaRon Rayford?
Yes, we did.
Please tell the jurors how successful you were with that.
We went to the address that was the subscriber information and made contact with an individual who identified himself as Mr. Rayford's father. He did not provide any information as to where his son was.
Did he give you any suggestions of where you might find him?
He said to check with his brother.
And did you do that?
Yes, we did.
And did he have any information concerning Mr. Rayford?
No, his statements were the same. They both knew that he had been recently dating a white female, but they didn't know where he was.
And did you talk to anyone else in an effort to locate Mr. Rayford?
At that time, no, ma'am.
So what happens next? What'd you do?
We're actually kind of jumped a little out of sequence. When we don't go back to try to locate Mr. Rayford until after we had done the daytime walkthrough of the crime scene.
Okay.
We tried to verify again whether we had any video of the area. We couldn't. When we didn't have that, we then decided to try to go to locate Mr. Rayford.
Let's talk about the video of the area. Did it come to your attention that there may be a video on a building in the area?
Yes, ma'am.
And what building would that be?
It's a place called the Alpha House, which is a home for unwed pregnant teenagers. It's located just west of the crime scene. It's a little west and south of that, and they had video cameras. We made every effort we could to try to get video from them, but their system had been recently affected by lightning and didn't record anything.
And that, the Alpha House, is that what it's called?
Yes, ma'am.
And is that close to where the motor scooter was parked?
It's just south of it.
So it's on the opposite side of 7th Street?
Yes, ma'am.
As the house where Shannon Griffin's body was found?
Correct.
So now let's fast forward again. After you've attempted to find LaRon Rayford, what did you do?
Went back to the police station and tried to do a little research on Mr. Rayford, see if we could find any other addresses that weren't listed for him.
And would that be in your computer system?
Yes, ma'am.
You have all kinds of information in the computer system, I take it?
Yes, ma'am.
And were you able to get any information on LaRon Rayford when you went back to the station?
I was.
And what was that?
He had another listed address of 611 5th Avenue North, apartment number 21.
And did you go to that address?
Yes, we did.
Did you also try to determine whether there was anyone else that was connected to that address?
Yes, there was.
And who was that?
Jennifer Sharon.
Did you determine that prior to going out there?
Yes, we did.
Okay. And when you went out there, what did you do?
We attempted to make contact with anyone in apartment number 21. There was no answer. So when we didn't make contact with anyone at the apartment, we made contact with the on-site manager there.
And did he attempt to help you in locating someone there at the apartment?
Yes, he did. We showed him pictures that we had, known photographs of both Mr. Rayford and Ms. Sharon to see if he could identify them as being the renters. He stated that Ms. Sharon was the renter and the only person that was supposed to be in the apartment, but he did know that someone else was there. We attempted through him to try to make phone contact with them.
And were you successful at doing that?
He did speak with Ms. Sharon.
He did. And did she indicate whether or not she was present in the apartment?
No, she did not.
And what did you do next?
Due to some circumstances that she had mentioned to us on the phone through the on-site manager, she had mentioned that they had left because they had recently had a fight.
Objection, Your Honor. hearsay.
We won't go into that, Judge.
Okay.
With the information, what did you do next?
We attempted to see if there was someone inside the apartment.
And did you ask the apartment manager to open the door for you?
He contacted the property owner who came and did.
Were you concerned, this is a homicide investigation, were you concerned about anybody else's welfare?
Yes, ma'am.
And is that why you went into the apartment?
And its immediacy to the crime scene location, yes, ma'am.
While we're talking about that, and you can answer this question while I'm walking around, did you find anything, any signs of a struggle or anybody inside the apartment when you went in there?
No, we did not.
And how long were you in there?
Less than 10 minutes, I would assume.
Did you notice anything unusual in the apartment while you were there?
It's a unkept apartment. There was what appeared to be a small animal, small dog that was possibly locked inside the bathroom area. We couldn't get access to the bathroom at that time. There was a number of items that were strewn across the floor, but nothing indicative of a struggle, just an unkept house.
Okay. Here we are, crime scene.
Yes, ma'am.
Where is the apartment where,
Number 21 is located in this building right directly across the street.
so it's right across the street from Fifth Avenue?
Yes,
On
ma'am.
Fifth Avenue?
On Fifth Avenue.
Did you go in the apartment, who were you with when you went in the apartment?
The on-site manager and Detective DeLuca.
After you went in the apartment, what did you all do?
We exited the apartment. At that time, Detective Gibson had arrived, and we tried to make contact with Ms. Sharon on the phone ourselves.
And were you successful at that?
Detective Gibson spoke with her briefly one time.
Okay. Did she ever give you any information about her whereabouts?
No, ma'am. Not directly.
At some point in time, now we're on October 24th,
Yes, ma'am.
and this is when you've gone to the apartment? Approximately what time did you say you went to the apartment?
By the time it's about 10:30.
At some time, you received information, suffice it to say, you're looking for Laron Rayford.
Yes, ma'am.
At some point in time, you receive information that he may be at an apartment on 89th Avenue North in St. Petersburg,
Yes, ma'am.
or in that area.
In that area.
Do you go to that area?
Myself and Detective DeLuca do, yes, ma'am.
And when you arrive in that area, what do you find?
As we're driving south on 5th Street, coming up on 89th Avenue, when you look east down the road, we can see two females walking towards us. I had a photograph of Ms. Sharon and recognized her from the photograph. We stopped and made contact with the two females.
Okay. And did you later identify who the second female was that was with Ms. Sharon?
Yes, ma'am.
And who was that?
Jennifer Mee.
Do you see her in the courtroom today?
Yes, I do.
And could you point her out and describe what she's wearing?
She's sitting at the table wearing a white top.
If the record could reflect that he has identified Jennifer Mee.
Any objection, Mr. Trevina?
No, Your Honor.
The record will so reflect.
So you stop and talk to Ms. Sharon and Ms. Mee.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you ask them where Laron Rayford is?
With Ms. Sharon, I did.
And did she give you a successful answer?
No, she did not.
And with that, what did you do?
When we made contact with them, I had contacted Sergeant Skinner and Detective Gibson, as well as asked Comm Center to send more units to help. At that point in time, we believed that Mr. Rayford was definitely in the area that we were at, that we were and where we needed to be, and we definitely needed more people with us. So we asked for more people to come.
And did they come?
Yes, they did.
So at this point in time, you don't know which apartment number he is in.
That's correct.
And at some point in time, you determined that.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you do a knock and announce at all the apartments there in this little apartment complex?
Yes, we did.
How many apartments were there?
I remember 9. There could be more.
And were there people in the apartments?
All but one.
Did they answer the door?
That answered the door. Correct. Only one door wasn't answered.
And what number was that?
Number 7.
And did you come to learn or believe that Laron Rayford might be in apartment number 7?
Yes, ma'am.
And what did you do with that information?
Detective Gibson contacted the person that was renting that apartment. By the time we had identified that individual, we had a phone number for them. He contacted that person, got permission to enter the apartment. As we knocked on the door to announce ourselves again and identify ourselves one more time, the door opened. I'm not sure if Detective Gibson opened the door, if the door was open from the inside, but a black male that I recognized exited the apartment, followed by a second black male.
And first black male out was LaRon Rayford?
Yes, ma'am.
And ultimately, who did you determine the second male was?
Lamont Newton.
And tell us about after they came out what occurred.
Mr. Rayford, I was there to make contact with him, brought him out into the courtyard, brought him towards me. He laid in the grass. He was emotional. He made some statements. Then I secured him with handcuffs, searched him, asked him if he knew who I was and why I was there. He said he did. I then placed him in one of our marked cruisers to be taken back to the police station.
And what about Mr. Newton?
Mr. Newton was secured by Detective Gibson and Sergeant Skinner.
And was he taken back to the police station as well?
Yes, ma'am.
What about Jennifer Sharon and Jennifer Mee? Do you recall them going back to the station?
Yes, ma'am.
And how did that occur?
Jennifer Sharon left in a marked cruiser. Initially, she'd been sitting in my vehicle when Detective Gibson was speaking with her. She then voluntarily went to the police station to be interviewed. She left with an officer. Miss Mee stayed at the crime scene, at the apartment scene. She was at one point leaning up against Detective Gibson's car. Afterwards, she voluntarily agreed to come to the police station. She asked to say goodbye to Mr. Newton, which she was allowed to, then agreed to come to the police station.
And was it you that asked her to go to the police station or someone else?
It was not me.
Okay. And how about Jennifer Sharon?
It was not me that asked her either.
Okay. Neither of them were under arrest.
That's correct.
So you go back to the station. Do you go back then as well?
Yes, ma'am.
And what do you do when you get to the station?
Once I get there, I meet with Sergeant Skinner. By that time, Detective Gibson and Detective DeLuca are all back as well. We decide who's going to interview who and start the interviews.
And who do you first interview?
I interviewed LaRon Rayford.
And you, after interviewing Mr. Rayford, excuse me, talk about his demeanor during the interview.
He alternated. He started out very emotional. He was crying. He was had visible signs where he was trying to vomit, to where he would then settle himself. And we allowed him to calm himself down. We gave him something to drink. He then spoke freely. He became very calm and was very cooperative during the interview.
And what did he tell you?
Objection, hearsay, Your Honor.
Come to the bench, please. Okay,
The jurors are out of the hearing.
thank you. And Mr. Labruzzo, were you fanning yourself like you were hot?
Because I felt a little, I've had a headache and I felt a little lightheaded, so
Okay,
I was a little hot, but I'm feeling better
okay.
now.
So I don't know, they may be gone, but,
No, we put an order to make it a little cooler.
okay. Did you still feel like you wanted it cooler? Or you all right?
I'm okay now.
I know the detective expressed it was hot, too.
But I do have a fever, so forgive me.
I'm feeling better
Okay,
now.
you want a little cooler?
Just slightly, not the blast. Okay. All right, Miss Olney, you're on.
Okay.
Jury's out.
You're out.
Right.
Detective, when you spoke with Mr. Rayford, did he read Miranda?
Yes, ma'am.
And did he consent to talk to you?
Yes, he did.
Did he admit to you that he had participated in a robbery?
Yes, he did.
And did he admit to you that's how Shannon Griffin got killed?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you, you didn't talk to Lamont Newton?
No, ma'am.
So that's where I'm going with that, Judge.
Okay.
Our objection stands. It's hearsay.
Well, I'm asking you to state it, please.
It's hearsay, Judge, and there is no exception to the hearsay rule that would allow such testimony to come into Ms. Mee's trial. I would think that would be reversible error in a mistrial.
Well, I'm thinking it through. It might be. I know it feels like a double-edged sword. Mr. Liebling spent a lot of time getting in statements like that in the last trial. So we made lots of findings about declaration against penal interest in that case. So, Ms. Olney, you got something else to say?
No.
Okay, I'm going to sustain the objection. Let's bring him back.
Burgess Deloy, bring him back.
If you've got a fever, do you have more water in there? Do you need somebody to get more water?
There's still,
Okay.
I brought a bottle I just emptied. Thank you. I'll apologize in advance if you have it tomorrow.
No problem.
Judge, the jurors are present and seated in the jury box.
Thank you for your patience. You may continue, Ms. Olney.
Yes, Your Honor. Your first interview was with who?
Mr. Rayford.
And after that interview, did you conduct any other interviews?
Yes, I did.
And who did you interview next?
I spoke to Miss Mee
And do you recall where you spoke to her?
inside the sergeant's office.
And did you read her rights?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you go over a written form with her?
Yes, I did.
If I could approach the witness? Yes. I'm showing you what's been marked for identification as State's Exhibit 54. Do you recognize what that is?
Yes, I do.
And what is that?
That's one of our written rights advisement forms that we utilize.
And is that the form you went over with Ms. Meade?
Yes, it is.
And did she sign that form?
Yes, it did.
And did you sign that form?
I did.
does that form accurately depict what occurred, what was signed the night of her questioning?
Yes, ma'am.
At this time, Your Honor, the state would move 54 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
54 is admitted.
Okay, Detective, would you please tell the jurors why now you are reading Miss Me a rights advisement form?
At this point, there were specific questions related to what had occurred on the 23rd that I needed to ask her, which might involve her.
And could you please tell the jurors what Miranda rights are?
When we utilize Miranda, when someone's having a custodial interview where they're obviously not free to leave, whether they have a concept of that or not, if they're somewhere that they can't leave and it's going to be a formal interview related to a crime that's occurred, we'll read them Miranda rights beforehand to make sure they understand there are certain things that are provided to them that they can invoke at any time.
And could you please tell the jurors, well, why don't you read it just like you read it to her that night?
One of the things that I do as well is as we go through the questions, when we get to the bottom, I have them read one back to me and put their initials next to that question as well. The form starts with the top is headed Rights Advisement Form. Then it has the offense number, which in this circumstance was 2010-70722. I asked the individual for their name, which she responded with Jennifer Ann Me. Her date of birth, which was 7/28 of 91. I asked the age. She responded back 19. I asked for her address. She gave me 2028 9th Street North, number 3 in St. Pete. There's some basic questions that we ask. Are you under the influence of any prescription drugs? Her answer was no. Alcohol? No. Any illegal drugs? No. If they respond yes to any of those above, we ask if yes, what? Education, last grade completed, was 9th grade. Asked if she could read, her response was some. Asked if she could write, her response was barely. And asked if she could hear us, and her answer was yes. So again, it's one of those reasons why we have them read one back. We want to make sure they actually can read some. It then goes into the date, which was 24 October 2010. The time was 6:04 p.m. It starts out with, I am Detective D. Warzinski of the St. Petersburg Police Department. Do you understand that you have the right to remain silent? Her answer was yes. We write their answers back as they give them. We ask them to give a yes or no audibly. Do you understand that anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law? Her answer was yes. Do you understand that you have the right to have an attorney present while you're being questioned? Her answer was yes. Do you understand that you cannot afford to hire an attorney? One will be appointed to represent you before any questioning if you wish? Her answer was yes. Do you understand that you can decide at any time to exercise these rights and not answer any questions or make any statements? Her answer to that was yes. That's the one I had her read back, which she put her initials next to it, which was J-A-M. Do you understand the rights I've just explained to you? Her answer was yes. Having these rights in mind, do you wish to talk to us now? Her answer was yes. She signs, then I sign, and the witness would sign the form as well. In this case, it was Detective DeLuca.
And she indicated that she would speak with you.
Yes, ma'am.
What was her demeanor when you first started talking with her?
She was crying.
And what did she tell you?
When we first started talking to her, I asked her basically where she was staying at, and she advised that she'd been staying the last couple of days with Ms. Sharon and her boyfriend, and that she didn't have a job, basically was living, going from hotel and apartments. And I explained to her that she was deeply involved in the matter and she needed to be honest. She then started to sob, and then she stated that she had made contact with the victim, in this case, Shannon Griffin, by telephone. She told us that she had met him on Mocha Space approximately 4 days prior to that. Mocha Space is a social networking site, which I wasn't aware of at the time until after this, and that she had met him on that site through a friend request. They had spoken a couple of times on Mocha Space, but on the 23rd was the first time that she had actually contacted him by telephone. She explained that she didn't have a telephone. She utilized a phone that was belonging to another individual to make contact with him.
Did she tell you who that phone belonged to?
LaRon Rayford. She stated that they all agreed, herself, that they needed to get some money.
Who did she tell you they all?
LaRon Rayford and Lamont Newton.
And herself?
And herself.
I'm sorry for interrupting. Go ahead.
She stated that Mr. Griffin had an interest in purchasing some marijuana, approximately a half ounce, which they were going to sell for $55. She advised us they didn't have any marijuana to sell. They were just going to instead take his money. She made arrangements through contacting Mr. Griffin to go ahead and meet there at a certain location. She was utilizing Mr. Rayford's phone. He had access to another phone. They would speak back and forth and let each other know when Mr. Griffin was getting close by. They had agreed upon an area where they were supposed to meet. He didn't like that first area. When they first made contact, he was actually closer than they expected, I believe. They then changed it to an area where they were familiar with as well. He drove out of that area. She stated she then took him back to where the two gentlemen were waiting for him.
Where was the area that he was directed to?
The house at 511 7th Street North, on the back corner. She said that she could see the two boys that were back there waiting for him, but he couldn't see from the angle that they were at.
Did she say that he came up on his scooter?
Yes, ma'am.
And did she say where he parked it?
In the apartment parking lot across the street.
Did she say who directed him to park it there?
She did.
Okay, continue, I'm sorry.
She said that when he went back there, she observed Mr. Newton grab him from behind. Mr. Rayford placed a gun to his head, and she took off from that point. She said as she hears a gunshot as she's running away, and she hears a second gunshot as she enters the apartment, which is number 21.
And did she tell Mr. Griffin any reason why she wasn't going back with him?
She told us that she told him she was going to go look out for the police, make sure the police weren't coming around.
And after she heard the shots, what did she tell you she did?
When she entered the apartment, she said several minutes went by. Mr. Newton returned, and then Mr. Rayford came after him. Mr. Rayford didn't have his shoes on, didn't have the gun with him anymore. He made some statements that they needed to get out of the...
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
They left the apartment, went to the apartment where we found them the next day. She said that, she told us that Mr. Griffin's belongings were in a clear plastic bag, which she thought were in the backyard of that apartment.
And in fact, did you have somebody go back to that apartment?
Yes, we did.
And were they able to locate the victim's property at that apartment?
Yes, ma'am.
And where did they locate that property?
They were in a ventilation opening for a fan in the bathroom of the apartment.
Now, was this initial interview taped?
That one was not, no, ma'am.
After you conducted this interview, did you offer her the ability to give a tape statement?
Yes, we did.
And did she agree to give that tape statement?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you listened to this tape?
Yes, I have.
And does it accurately depict what Jennifer Meade gave to you in a tape statement?
Yes, ma'am.
And for the record, this has previously been introduced as State's Exhibit 50, and I believe defense counsel had no objection to it coming in, although we didn't discuss this second portion. There's both interviews are on this tape.
Okay.
If I could publish it to the jury.
Yes.
Okay, Chris. It's not evidence. It's not Exhibit 50. I apologize, Judge. There's a reason it's not playing.
It's 51?
This is it.
Is it
It's
51?
53.
53. And is 53 admitted? Okay.
Today's date is October 24, 2010. Time now is approximately 6:12 p.m. Present in the room is Jennifer Ann Lee, N-E-E, Detective Dave Orzinski, and Officer Green. This is arrest report number 2010-70722. All right, Jennifer, let me ask you a question. Have you been treated fairly? Have we promised you anything?
No.
Have we treated you badly in any way? Okay. You've been read your rights?
Yes.
You understood all your rights? You answered this is the form I'm showing you, is the correct form?
Yes, sir.
The one you signed, and Detective Borzinski signed?
Yes, sir.
And I'm gonna sign? Okay. So we promise you nothing, we haven't treated you badly, everything's been good, correct? Okay. All right. Now you're gonna tell us about what happened this morning, last night. Go ahead.
Okay, we need to start over.
He had wrote me on local talk about he ordered some weed, so I told him where he could come and get some weed.
Can you turn it up a little more? I can barely hear.
Do you want me to move this over?
That might work. Okay, so how far back do you want to start, Madam Reporter? To her whole statement?
Pretty much.
Yeah, okay. There was one little part before where Detective DeLuca said something, she responded, that sounded garbled.
Okay.
And then her longer statement was after that.
Yeah, track two.
Hello, this is Detective Gary Gibson. It's Sunday, 10/24/2010.
Okay, Chris, I need your help. Sorry.
All right, today's date is October 24, 2010. Time now is approximately 6:12 p.m. Present in the room is Jennifer Ann Lee, N-E-E, Detective Dave Orzinski, and Officer Green. This is arrest report number 2010-70722. Jennifer, let me ask you a question. Have you been treated fairly?
Yes, sir.
Have we promised you anything?
No.
Have we treated you badly in any way?
No, sir.
If
anything, I've been to tell that.
Okay. You've been read your rights?
Yes, sir.
You understood all your rights? Yes. You answered this is the form I'm showing you, is the correct form?
Yes, sir.
The one you signed and Detective Borzinski signed?
Yes, sir.
And I'm going to sign? Okay. So we promise you nothing. We haven't treated you badly.
No, sir.
Everything's been good, correct?
That's
okay. Right. All right. Now you're going to tell us about what happened this morning, last night.
Yes, sir.
All right. Go ahead.
Okay. Last night I spoke to the victim, and he had wrote me on Loco talk about he wanted some weed, so I told him where he could come and get some weed from. I want to say approximately an hour later, he was calling Alon's phone, asking me where I can meet him at and everything, and that's when I told him Grove and 7th Street, and when he told me he was already at the Coliseum, I told him just to come to my playground or whatever it is off of 5th and 7th, and that's when Martin and Laurent took the man. I mean, that's when I had walked the man to the back of the apartment house, wherever the hell that shit is. And the boys had told the man not to say anything, and Mont had choked him, and Laurent put the gun to his head. And when I walked off, I was to the corner. I heard the first gunshot. After the first gunshot, I ran and went home. And the boys came upstairs and told me and the other Jennifer to get our shit together because we had to go. And all Laurent kept screaming, he thinks he killed the man.
Okay, let's back up a little bit. The Loca What was that?
Mogo space.
Mogo, M-O-G-O space?
Mogo with a C.
M-O-C-O space. That's how you met Shannon?
Yes, sir.
And you've known him for how long?
I want to say possibly 4 days.
Okay.
He sent me a friend request, and we were talking. The first time I had met him, he also wanted some weed, but at that time, I don't know, but I didn't follow through with it. And then last night, I finally followed through with it and gave him Laurent's phone number and told him to call me when he was down this way.
And what were the intentions when you gave him Laurent's phone number? Was there any intention to sell him any weed?
No, sir. The intentions were for the boys just to rob him, and that was it.
Okay. So he comes down there, and when you first comes down there, where's he at?
He is, when he first comes,
He calls you, and where's he at?
the Coliseum.
And where are you at?
I was at the 5th and 7th at the playground, my playground.
Okay. You told him to come over there,
Yes, sir.
and you told him what, to park his scooter
Yeah, I told him to park his scooter in the driveway.
where we found it?
In the one little house next to the park.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like-
I guess, yeah. Right next
And-
to the Alpha House.
Okay. And then you come down and meet him there?
Yeah. Oh, no, I was already down there.
Oh, okay.
But, yeah, you might as well say I came down there to meet him.
And then you start walking towards Fifth Avenue?
No, when he parks his scooter, I walked towards the house where I seen the boys standing.
And that's a vacant house?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
He didn't, yeah, the 2-story peach house. And when I seen the boys, I had told him that the boys will help him with what he needs. And that's when I walked around the back, and then I started walking up
Walk around the back where?
of the house.
Oh,
So I could come onto the sidewalk.
Okay.
And then when I was walking up the sidewalk, I stood at the end of the street right there waiting to cross. And when I heard the first gunshot, I ran across. And then I heard the second gunshot when I got to the top of the stairs, and I ran in the house and locked the door. And sat in there till the boys came back up, and that's when Laurent started screaming he shot and killed the man. And we had to all get our shit and leave, and that's when we went to the apartments off of 5th and 89th, and that's where we stayed all night until this morning. And you guys came.
Okay, when you said you went behind the house, there's that vacant field. Is that where you walked behind that peach house? You were coming up from that vacant field there?
Yeah, right there.
And then you went,
onto the sidewalk.
like here's 7th Street, then there's the house, that vacant field. Were you on the other side of the house walking back?
Yeah, when you go through.
Like in the fence.
Yeah, near the fence. Yeah.
Near the fence, okay. And where were the boys?
Near that, the wooden fence.
The wooden
back
fence?
Yeah.
Back fence, okay. And he could see him?
The boys could see the man. The man couldn't see the boys because the boys are ducked off around the
So you just told him to go over there and the boys were over there?
He would help him with, the boys would help him with what he needs. And after I said that, I didn't know what else to do, so I just left.
And you went down, you told him you were going to go look for the police?
Yeah, I told him I was going to go look for the police, make sure police weren't out or whatever the case may be. And when I said that, I had walked around the corner and walked up onto the front street of 5th and 7th, and then I ran across.
Okay, so he's thinking you're going to look for the police?
Police, and
because he thinks he's buying marijuana.
And the boys end up robbing. Well,
And you said Lamont had choked.
Yeah, I had choked him, and Laurent was the one who pulled the trigger.
And how do you know this?
Because Laurent was the only one with the gun. I didn't see Mont with the gun at all.
Okay, and when they came back to the house, what did Laurent and Lamont say?
All they kept screaming is, "I killed the man, I killed the man."
Who was saying that?
Laurent was.
Laurent was.
Yeah.
What was Lamont saying?
He wasn't saying nothing. He was dead quiet. He was not saying nothing at all.
Okay, but Laurent was saying that I think I killed him.
I think I killed him. And then he said, I need to go back and make sure he's all right. And then at that point, given time, we were getting our shit together to leave.
Did he ever go back?
No, sir.
What did you say happened to his gun?
He said he threw it, because that's the first thing that came out of my mouth. What happened to his gun? He said I threw it after I popped it off. And I seen he had no shoes. I was like, where are your shoes? He was like, I left them next to the dude.
When you guys left, was the police there already?
No, sir.
So you left before the police got there?
Yeah. From what was said, from what I'm understanding, the police, when they never found, I guess, his body till 10:30 last night.
What time did this happen?
I couldn't even tell you the truth. I know it was dark. I had to be somewhere between, I want to say 8-ish, 9-ish, somewhere around there.
Would it have been right after you talked to him on the phone? Who talked to him on the phone?
I did. I talked to him on the phone.
So that was the last time? So it would have been right after that?
Yeah, about maybe 2 or 3 minutes after that.
Yeah,
Because it took him a minute to come around the corner, yeah.
So right after you talked to him on the phone, shortly thereafter, within less than 5 minutes?
Yeah, less than 5 minutes, all of that occurred.
And you heard how many gunshots?
I heard 2.
And And what happened to Shannon's
belongings. If I remember correctly, they're still over at the apartment where you had gotten the blood test. And if I remember correctly, it's in a plastic bag tied up in the backyard.
And what belongings were they?
His wallet, his scooter keys, and what else? His cell phone.
Did they get any money from him?
Not that I know. I didn't see no money out of the whole deal. I seen, well, $5. But I think they threw the $5 right inside the bag with everything else.
Okay.
Is there any possible way I can please get a cigarette?
Yeah, we'll work on that. Is there anything else you want to add?
No,
Okay,
sir.
we're gonna conclude the interview. The time now is 6:20 p.m.
Yes.
I'm showing you what's been entered into evidence as state exhibit 8B.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell the jurors what that is?
It's a picture of Jennifer Me from that night.
And was that taken after her arrest?
Yes, ma'am.
Was that taken after she gave you the statement of
Yes.
participating in a robbery?
Yes, ma'am.
Objection to the editorialization, Your Honor.
Okay.
I'll withdraw
Next.
that, Judge.
All right.
Was that taken after her arrest?
Yes, ma'am, it was.
How many arrests did you make that night?
3.
I'm showing you what's been entered into evidence as State's Exhibit 8A. You recognize that picture?
I do.
And who is that a picture of?
That's LaRon Rayford.
And was that a picture taken after he was arrested that night?
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm showing you a picture what's been entered into evidence as State's Exhibit 8C. You recognize that photograph?
Yes, ma'am.
And what is that a photograph of?
Lamont Newton.
And was that taken after his arrest that night?
Yes, it was.
Judge, we may want to approach this point.
Okay. Yes. Yes.
Judge, the jurors out of the room.
Thank you. Yes, so that's number 56. And what Mr. Trevina's word referring to is the magic marker blackouts.
And I think
And-
you have ruled out the text messages coming in, and I think those are the only rules.
But that was 57.
Yes, I don't think there's any X'd out.
Oh, you think that's the only one?
Yes.
Okay, let's see. You might be right. Mr. Trevina, you want to come look at this too?
Thank you, Judge.
Okay. We'll wait just a minute. It does look like it's the text messages, but I'll go ahead and let you look at 56.
Thank you, Judge.
Mhm.
Only the text messages.
I would have thought it was in both too, so I didn't disagree with you for objecting, but I didn't. I think she's right. Just check all the pages and make sure she
Yeah.
is. Okay.
That's fine.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so is Miss Me. So, Miss Me needs a comfort break. Everybody else can have a comfort break. That one juror's getting a cigarette break, so. Okay, would you just hand that back to Miss Olney, please, Deputy Birch? Okay?
Judge, would you have any problem with me advising the witness so we don't run into a problem that we are excluding the evidence number 57, the text?
Right, so, well, I'll tell him. I ruled that the text couldn't come in because they were between Rayford and Whitlock, and so didn't have enough nexus to me. Okay, thank you.
All rise,
And
please.
so if the detective needs a comfort break, Deputy Birch, make sure he can get where he needs to.
Okay, good.
All right, so let's try 10 minutes and hope he's back from his cigarette break.
Okay. Court is in recess for 10 minutes according to the courtroom clock. Yeah, you can go back. Yes.
Yeah, I was-
Right in the conference room there. Oh, yeah. You want to do it? Okay. Yeah. You let me know.
So I don't run into a mistake. There's a text message log from Laron's phone to Shannon's phone. There's 9 text messages between the two of them. There's 14 phone calls and 9 text messages.
It's the same problem we'll have with Carol a lot. Until she testifies, it's not.
Okay, I'm saying I don't want to walk into a mistake.
Right.
Because that log is just subpoena results, which is tolls in and out, which are phone calls and texts in and out. For a period of time, not between the two phones, but a period of time. You get all calls. Okay.
getting it or in the middle of this?
I'm in day 2.
No.
Yeah, my daughter's been
People
sick.
here sick.
Yeah, my daughter's been sick for several days, so she was nice enough to give me a work present.
You know what? If you wait till my partner comes in, I'll take you on the nice water fountain, so you don't hear that.
It's actually so easy.
What now?
Soapy.
Give me the picture. I'll wash it out. No, but I didn't. Well, one time you took me out. This is about 8 months ago.
How often do they get filled every day?
Well, every day that Debbie's, and I do.
Fresh water.
If I'm the lead Debbie, so we empty it out. But
That's what I worry
no,
about.
no, they don't. That's why I didn't want. Would you guys just hold on the fort, make sure nobody comes back?
Issue pillows and blankets.
We're holding
Oh,
out.